Well, the big story this week is obviously the government shutdown that's taking place in DC. Something I want to cover today is a different thing that's happening, which is Trump's continued escalation of deploying federal troops into American cities. Now, before we talk about what's happening today, I sort of want to just add some context to this, which I think is interesting, which is that, back in 2024, Kamala Harris said during the campaign that Trump was planning on doing this and deploying troops into American cities against citizens. And at the time, people called her overdramatic and hysterical and said that's never going to happen. You're just using this as a scare tactic. Well, guess what? Trump won and he took office, and we saw over the summer him deploy federal troops into Washington, D.C. Now, at the time, when people pointed that out and said, hey, see, look, he's going to do this thing we told you he's going to do, the response from the right was, well, Trump just has more authority over the DC police. And so you're being over dramatic. This is just sort of a one-off situation. Now we see that, once again, this is not a one-off situation, which brings us to today and this expected deployment of around 200 or 250 federal troops into Portland. Now, I want to play a clip from Trump's sort of rambling, incoherent Quantico speech earlier this week, so you can hear the way that he talked about and he thinks about federal troop deployments in American cities. Let's play that clip for you.
Very important mission. And I told Pete, we should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military, National Guard, but military, because we're going into Chicago very soon. That's a big city with an incompetent governor, stupid governor, stupid. They threw him out of his family business. He was so stupid. I know the family. He becomes governor. He's got money. Not money that he made, but he ran for governor, he won, and now he criticizes us all the time. And last week they had 11 people murdered, 44 people shot. The week before that they had 5 people murdered, 28 people shot. Every weekend they lose 5, 6. If they lose 5, they're considering it a great week. They shouldn't lose any.
You heard what he said. Using them as a training ground for the military. Using U.S. citizens and U.S. cities as a training ground for military deployment. That is chilling. That is not law and order. That is a blueprint for a federalized police force. And we see this happen. There is a line, and people point out the line and say this thing's going to happen, and people say no, it's not. And then Trump crosses it. The right normalizes it, and then they find a new line to push. And that's what we've started to see with this escalation, because initially Trump wasn't putting troops into cities where the governors weren't working with him on it because it's against the law. But however, on this, the Portland mayor and the governor of Oregon have said, we do not want federal troops in this city. It is unnecessary. Crime in Portland is down significantly over the past couple of years. So what is the excuse for it? And that is what we're starting to see play out here is Trump and the administration using very obscure laws as a justification to go over the heads of mayors and governors to put troops in cities where they are not requested and they are not desired. And I want to play what the police chief in Portland said in an interview last night about the current state of Portland, contrary to Trump's claims that it's a war zone.
And what we've heard from federal officials describing what they say is the situation on the ground there, you're saying that doesn't align with what you've seen and what your officers have seen.
Correct. I mean, the city is in a tremendous state of renewal. We recognize that 20 and 21 were some tough times, but 2025, we see crime down double digits in nearly all major categories. We're seeing, high return foot traffic downtown. We hosted some of our largest conventions in the city's history this year, large scale sporting events, et cetera. So no, it's not lining up.
So you heard it there from the chief of police. There is no crime wave or crime crisis taking place in Portland. And while he acknowledged that they dealt with some issues around crime in 20 and 21, that crime is down double digits right now. And that, as he said, the city is going through a renewal period. What he does acknowledge elsewhere in this interview is that there are basically protests taking place around the immigration building in Portland. And that is a core part of what Trump is using to go over the heads of governors and send troops into these cities. He's using an obscure U.S. law, basically saying that the president has the authority to protect federal buildings. So what he is doing in this situation is basically saying that the federal immigration building in Portland is under siege, and that is why he is sending federal troops into Portland, which is not true. It's there are protests. The officer said elsewhere in the interview that they've made arrests themselves, but that the situation is under control and is not out of hand. And that is what is interesting here, is every time that people think that there's some sort of legal backstop to Trump and what he's doing in this situation, they go find an obscure law and they lean on that to carry out whatever objective they have. And right now, these deployments are going through the courts and lawsuits have been filed, but it could take days or weeks to find out, what the rulings on those are. And in the meantime, the administration is moving forward with this plan in Portland and also in Illinois, where they deployed a vast number of ICE agents over the weekend. And Trump is now planning to call up another 200 or 250 federal troops into Chicago to quote unquote protect ICE as their objective. And this is what Governor J.B. Pritzker had to say about that, and also what he had to say about Trump's kind of unhinged Quantico speech this week.
On Democrats, and now he's made an enemies list. He's made a list of people that are his political opponents, and he's calling us domestic enemies. I mean, what kind of a country are we in here? The United States used to be a country where the president followed the Constitution, where the president believed in the rule of law, where the president didn't target people based on their views, but rather had debate with people and maybe won, maybe lost in an election and put their views forward and got them passed. But the idea that you're going to go suggest that you're going to arrest people, or that people don't deserve to be U.S. citizens when they are, just because they oppose the president of the United States. I mean, there is something genuinely wrong with this man, and the 25th Amendment ought to be invoked.
Look, I know that there is obviously zero chance that this current cabinet or this current Congress is going to invoke the 25th Amendment against the president of the United States, especially in this term of Trump's. However, I did like seeing Pritzker sort of go there and bring that up, because I think it sort of at least brings some strong language back to what the president is doing in a time where it feels like so many people have become numb to what's going on. And I think, the last time there was actual serious talk of using the 25th Amendment was after January 6th. And it sort of feels like now, constantly there's just this feeling of living January 6th. And that's the, okay, we're going to end that. Look, obviously, nobody in this cabinet or administration or Congress is going to invoke the 25th Amendment against Trump right now. This is the party and the administration of Trump, and for better or worse, mostly worse, they are showing that they are going to fall in line behind with whatever he wants to do. But I do think it is good to see Pritzker use some strong language and some strong rhetoric against the president right now, because I think with everything that happens every single day and every single week, it's so easy to become numb to what's happening and feel like it's normal when we are so far past the line of what is normal and what is acceptable, and things that, a year ago seemed outlandish are now happening. And the one upside of this is, none of these deployments have resulted in huge clashes yet. Hopefully it stays that way, but it does beg this question of how far is Trump going to go on this stuff? And when the midterms come up next year, is he going to, send them to polling places and claim that he's, protecting people from Antifa or using some sort of obscure law or excuse to intimidate voters? That type of stuff does not seem outlandish or far off anymore. And that's what's scary. And to cap all of this off and just provide a little more chilling perspective on it, I want to play what Stephen Miller said yesterday when they went to Memphis to deploy federal troops there. Let's take a look at it.
I see the guns and badges in this room. You are unleashed. The handcuffs that you're carrying, they're not on you anymore. They're on the criminals. And whatever you need to get it done, we're going to get it.
I don't even know where to begin with this clip. So Stephen Miller sees guns and badges and handcuffs for these troops, and he's ready to unleash them on the people of Memphis. He's basically greenlighting abuse and harassment on citizens who do not want them there. And that is the problem that we're starting to see happen too, which is some of these red state governors who are trying to provide cover and justification to the administration for this whole deployment across the country. And so they're inviting the administration and troops into their states so they can say, hey, look, we're having troops here too. It's okay. The left is being dramatic about this. The problem is blue states and blue cities are obviously going to be the primary focus of this. And the problem is once they're there, some of these deployments are for 30 days or 60 days, but we can see the writing on the wall because we can already see what happened in DC is when these troops are supposed to leave and the governor wants them out and Trump wants to extend their stay in whatever city they're in, he's going to do things like threaten federal funding for them and use other justifications to try to hurt the cities that are trying to move these troops out after their deployment timeline has ended. So I think for the people who were all mocked for being nervous about this last year, we are seeing it play out in real time, and there's probably a lot that's going to happen moving forward. That is it for me today. If you liked what you saw, throw a like on this video. Follow the Demwins Media YouTube channel. Follow me at buildingthebench.substack.com, and we will keep bringing you the news as you need to see it. Thanks for watching.